Hello, dear listeners. Tonight, I invite you to journey with me to a kingdom nestled beneath a shimmering sky, where the stars once watched over the land like silent guardians. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the gentle glow of starlight wash over you, bringing peace to your mind and warmth to your heart. Together, we'll follow a brave princess who embarks on a journey into the heart of a mysterious forest, where shadows hold secrets and the stars keep silent vigil. Let the rhythm of her steps and the calm of the night guide you gently toward rest. As you listen, let go of the day's worries and feel yourself drifting peacefully, softly, into a realm of dreams. Now, let us begin. There once lay a kingdom nestled beneath a shimmering sky, where stars watched over the land like 1,000 watchful eyes. Each night, their light poured down like streams of silver, bathing the valleys, rivers, and ancient trees in an otherworldly glow. In this kingdom ruled a young princess whose kindness ran as deep as her courage. Her people loved her dearly, for she brought them peace and warmth, a ruler with a heart open to all. Yet one fateful evening, something strange stirred the heavens. As dusk settled, no stars appeared to crown the night. Instead, a dark veil spread across the sky, swallowing every last glimmer. The kingdom, once alive with nocturnal light, felt as if it had been cast into an endless abyss. Torches and candles flickered and died out inexplicably, and the people trembled, for no light, however strong, could penetrate the unnatural darkness that now suffocated the land. The princess, feeling the weight of this strange darkness, was shaken but resolute. She visited her mother, the queen, in her private chambers, hoping the wise woman might offer some explanation. The queen's face was pale, her gaze heavy with a sorrow that ran deeper than her daughter had ever seen. "The stars," the queen began, her voice barely a whisper. "They are not simply gone. They have been taken from us. They are bound by an ancient curse that slumbers in the midnight forest." The midnight forest. Even the name caused a chill to crawl up the princess's spine. It was a place of shadow and mystery, lying on the kingdom's edge, forgotten by most and feared by all. There were legends of those who entered and never returned, of whispers that snatched the mind, of shadows that twisted into forms half seen and half felt. The midnight forest was a place out of time, untouched by light and mercy. "Why has this happened?" the princess asked, her voice a thread of defiance in the looming dread. The queen looked upon her daughter with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Long ago, our ancestors made promises to the spirits of the midnight forest. They kept the balance, as delicate as the stars themselves. But time wore on, and the promises were broken, forgotten, as we embraced the light and turned away from the shadows. Now the curse has awakened, and only those who dare to confront it may hope to bring back the stars. princess felt a shiver dance along her skin, but beneath it was a fire, an unyielding spark. She was no ordinary ruler. She would not cower in the face of shadow. Her people needed her, and she would face whatever lay beyond that dark forest to save them. "My daughter," the queen murmured, placing a cool hand upon the princess's cheek. "This path is not a simple journey. There are things in the midnight forest that were never meant to be seen, secrets that lie hidden from mortal eyes. You may go, but you may not return unchanged." With a steady breath, the princess met her mother's gaze, unwavering. "For my kingdom, for my people, I would face whatever the shadows hold. I will bring back the stars." The queen, seeing the fierce determination in her daughter's eyes, nodded, though her own were brimming with a sorrow that words could not express. She reached into a drawer, producing a pendant on a thin, delicate chain. The pendant held a single small gem that glowed faintly, a pale blue light that pulsed with warmth. "This belonged to your great-grandmother. It was given to her by a spirit of the midnight forest, as a symbol of their truce. Wear it well. It may guide you when all else fails." The princess accepted the pendant with reverence, feeling the faint pulse of its light echo against her heartbeat. She slipped it over her neck, the cold weight of it settling against her chest like a promise, or perhaps a warning. The next morning, as dawn approached, but no light crested the horizon, the princess set out from the castle, her steps echoing in the unnatural quiet of the kingdom. Her people watched, their eyes wide with a mix of hope and dread, as she crossed into the edge of the midnight forest. And as she took her first step into the shadows, a sense of foreboding wrapped itself around her like the mist that clung to the trees, whispering secrets of darkness and promises of light that had long since been forgotten. The midnight forest loomed around the princess like a living thing, each step drawing her deeper into its ancient heart. Shadows stretched between twisted trees, their branches clawing upward, gnarled and dark as though thirsting for light. The air grew thick, dense with silence, save for the faint whispering she felt more than heard, a murmuring language spoken by the leaves, or perhaps by the spirits lingering in this forsaken place. Her mother's pendant cast a faint, cold glow, the only break in the consuming darkness. Its blue light was hardly enough to light the path, yet it provided a sense of direction. She clutched it tightly, feeling its gentle pulse against her fingertips, a reminder of the connection her ancestors once held with these shadows. The forest seemed aware of her presence, responding with an eerie intelligence. Roots twisted from the ground like skeletal hands reaching toward her feet, while the fog thickened, obscuring her vision. She moved cautiously, resisting the urge to look back, for the tales warned that once the forest held your gaze, it would never release it. After what felt like hours, she came upon a narrow path lined with trees as old as time. their bark marked by symbols she could not understand. Her steps slowed, as if the very ground beneath her feet sensed her hesitation and sought to pull her back. But she pressed on, her mind drawn to the mystery she felt within the forest, as if it were calling her deeper toward its forbidden secrets. Just as her courage began to waver, a voice broke through the silence. It was a soft, deep tone, like the low hum of wind across an ancient lake. "You seek something beyond the light, do you not, child?" The princess froze, her heart pounding as she searched for the speaker. Out of the shadows, an owl appeared, its feathers flecked with silver, its eyes wide and gleaming like twin moons. It perched on a low branch, watching her with a gaze that held far too much understanding. "I seek the stars," she replied, her voice steady but laced with caution. "They've been taken from my people. I come to end the curse and return their light." The owl tilted its head, considering her words as though they were an offering laid at its feet. "The stars taken? No, child. They are not taken, only hidden. Hidden because of promises broken and memories lost. The midnight forest holds them close, keeping them safe from those who have forgotten the ancient bonds." A ripple of doubt touched her heart. Could it be that her people were at fault? That this curse was of their own making? But before she could voice her questions, the owl gave a solemn nod. "You must venture deeper, but beware. The shadows here are ancient, older than your kingdom's oldest stones. This forest remembers all that your kind has forgotten. The journey will cost you something, for nothing here is freely given." And with that, the owl spread its wings and disappeared into the darkness, leaving her alone with the weight of its words. The princess steadied herself, her resolve unshaken. If it was true that her people had caused this darkness, she would be the one to restore the balance. She continued along the path, her steps light yet determined, and soon the silence of the forest gave way to other sounds. The rustling of leaves, the whisper of the wind, and faintly, the sound of water trickling over stone. She followed this faint melody until she reached a small stream, its waters as black as ink under the dim glow of her pendant. And there, by the stream's edge, she encountered the second of the forest's guardians, a stag with antlers as wide as the boughs of a tree, woven with vines and lichen. The stag's eyes were dark and fathomless, holding secrets that seemed older than even the forest itself. It observed her with a silent dignity, its breath misting in the cool air. The princess knelt, sensing that she was in the presence of something sacred. "I seek the path to the heart of the forest," she said, her voice softened by reverence. "Will you guide me?" The stag did not answer in words, but it inclined its great head, as if acknowledging her request. In the quiet that followed, she felt a strange understanding pass between them. This creature, bound by the shadows yet still a part of the forest's light, was not her enemy, but her ally. With silent steps, the stag turned, leading her along a trail hidden by shadows and undergrowth. They walked together, the princess following in its wake, feeling the oppressive darkness lighten with each step, as though the forest itself recognized her purpose. Yet, even as they journeyed further, she felt a pull, a whispering voice somewhere deep within the forest's core, calling her name. It was the call of secrets bound in the shadows, of the curse lingering in the roots of the midnight forest. And she knew in her heart that she was nearing the heart of the mystery, where promises long forgotten would rise once more to challenge her courage. In the silent company of the great stag, the princess ventured deeper into the forest's core. The shadows thickened, no longer mere darkness, but something alive, something that pulsed and shifted as if breathing with her every step. The trees grew closer together, their ancient branches interwoven, creating a canopy that swallowed any hint of the sky above. Her mother's pendant glowed faintly, casting a spectral blue light that illuminated only the edges of her path, leaving the rest cloaked in mystery. After some time, the stag paused, its dark eyes resting on her, as though imparting a silent farewell. With a graceful bow, it faded into the shadows, leaving her alone once more. The princess stood still, feeling the weight of the silence pressing in, and yet she was undeterred. She had faced her fear and made allies of the forest's creatures. Her heart, though cautious, remained fierce and resolute. As she continued, the air began to change, taking on a scent she recognized as ancient, of damp earth, moss, and something sharper, like cold stone. She had come to a place where the path split into three, each route darker and more treacherous than the last. She closed her eyes, letting her heart guide her steps, and chose the path that felt true. It wasn't long before she heard the soft padding of paws. Emerging from the shadows, a fox appeared, its coat a mix of ember red and the deep browns of the forest floor. The fox's eyes glinted with a clever light, and it regarded her with a mixture of amusement and intrigue. "Princess of starlit lands, what brings you to my hidden paths?" the fox asked, its voice smooth as a river stone. "I seek the source of the curse, the heart of this forest, where the lost stars are kept," she replied, her voice steady, though the fox's sharp gaze made her wary. "Will you guide me?" The fox tilted its head, as if considering her request, its gaze lingering on the pendant at her neck. "A guide, you say? The paths I guard are not for the faint of heart. They are twisted with forgotten dreams and secrets older than even the forest itself." The princess remained silent, meeting the fox's sly gaze without flinching. Seeing her resolve, the fox chuckled, a sound that was both a purr and a whisper of leaves in the wind. "Very well," it said, its tone laced with hidden meaning. "But guidance here does not come without a price. I will help you if you share with me a memory, a glimpse of something precious, something that warms your heart even in the coldest night. The princess hesitated, feeling the weight of the fox's request. Memories were not given lightly in the midnight forest. They could be trapped, held, or twisted, bound forever in the shadows. But she could sense that without this sacrifice, her path would remain hidden. Gently, she closed her eyes and called forth a memory of her mother's voice, singing to her as a child, a lullaby that held the comfort of starlight and safety. When she opened her eyes, she felt the faintest pang of loss, as though the memory had slipped from her grasp, now belonging to the forest and its creatures. The fox's eyes softened, and it nodded, satisfied with her gift. "This way," it said, and with a swift turn, it led her down a path that twisted like a serpent, deeper into the forest's heart. As they traveled, the shadows grew thicker, but the fox's agile movements guided her around roots that rose like silent sentries and past rocks that seemed to hold faint faces, watching her with hollow eyes. At last, they came to a clearing where the shadows thinned and the air seemed to pulse with an energy older than time. In the center of the clearing stood a figure draped in midnight robes, barely distinguishable from the darkness itself. It was neither human nor creature, its form shifting with each breath, merging with the shadows and flickering as though made of mist and memory. The fox gave a low bow and stepped aside, disappearing into the forest, leaving the princess alone with this enigmatic being. The figure turned, its eyes like pools of black glass, ancient and unyielding. Its voice, when it spoke, was a low murmur that seemed to come from the very depths of the forest. "I am the keeper of lost stars," it said, each word resonating like the tolling of a distant bell. "What brings you here, child of light?" The princess straightened, feeling the weight of her purpose once more. "I have come to reclaim the stars, to free my kingdom from the curse that has fallen upon us." The keeper regarded her with an unreadable expression. The stars were not taken. They were abandoned. The balance was broken by your people, who turned away from the shadows, forgetting the promises that once bound light and darkness in harmony. A chill swept over her as the meaning of the keeper's words sank in. Her ancestors, in their embrace of light, had forsaken the forest, leaving it to wither in shadows. She realized now that the forest had not cursed her people out of malice, but out of a need to preserve its place, to ensure its survival as the light encroached. "Then I will make amends," she said, her voice steady, though her heart beat heavily in her chest. "I pledge to honor the forest, to protect its shadows as my kingdom protects the light. I will restore the balance." The keeper tilted its head, as though listening to a distant echo. After a moment, it nodded slowly. "Your vow is heard, child, but know this, once made, it cannot be unbroken. The midnight forest will forever be bound to you, as you are bound to it. And with that, the clearing filled with a gentle light, soft and silver, like the first glimmer of dawn after a storm. The stars began to return, one by one, flickering back to life across the canopy above, casting their light upon the forest and her kingdom beyond. The princess closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her promise, and the forest itself seemed to breathe in relief. The air in the clearing grew thick with anticipation as the stars flickered above, restored yet fragile, like embers carefully stoked to life. The princess felt the immense weight of her vow, the ancient words still echoing in her heart. Standing before her, the keeper of lost stars remained silent, a figure cloaked in shadows yet luminous with an authority that was neither cruel nor kind, simply timeless, an embodiment of both the forest and the night sky. "You have pledged yourself to this place," the keeper intoned, its voice a murmur that seemed to rise from the very soil beneath her feet. "But words alone are not enough. A bond like this requires something deeper, a piece of yourself woven into the very fabric of this forest. Only then will the stars be truly safe and the balance restored." The princess's heart tightened. She had expected trials, had braced herself for a journey filled with darkness. Yet now she felt the enormity of what was being asked. To restore the balance was to surrender a part of her soul, to leave behind something essential within the midnight forest, binding her forever to its mysteries and shadows. Her thoughts turned briefly to her kingdom, to her people waiting anxiously for her return, and the hope that had driven her to this moment rekindled her courage. "What must I give?" she asked, her voice unwavering. The keeper's form shifted, as if moved by a silent breeze, and it extended one long shadowy hand toward her. In its grasp, she saw a small dark crystal pulsating with a faint light, as though it held the dying breath of a star. "This is a shard of memory, a fragment of who you are and who you might yet become," the keeper said softly. "It will anchor your spirit to this place. By offering it, you will remember this vow, and the midnight forest will recognize you as its own." The princess reached out, her hand trembling slightly as her fingers brushed against the crystal. Instantly, a warmth filled her, mingled with a sudden ache, a realization that this fragment was part of her own essence. She felt memories surge within her, her first sight of the stars, her mother's laughter, the joy she felt playing among the flowering meadows of her childhood. The crystal pulsed, urging her to consider the enormity of the sacrifice, and yet she knew it was necessary. Her promise was not just for her people, but for the silent spirits of the forest, the balance that had been neglected for so long. With a deep breath, she cupped the crystal in her hands and pressed it to her heart, surrendering her essence to the shadows. The crystal dissolved in a burst of light, its warmth sinking into the ground. and she felt a faint shift within herself, as though a piece of her soul had anchored in the soil. The weight of the sacrifice settled upon her, a feeling both poignant and reassuring, as though she had planted a seed of herself in the heart of the midnight forest. The keeper nodded slowly, satisfied, and the shadows around it softened, revealing glimpses of starlight woven into the fabric of its form. Now, child of light and shadow, you are bound to this place as it is bound to you. When you leave, a part of this forest will go with you, and a part of you will remain here. Should the stars ever falter, should the balance waver, you will feel the call, and you will return to renew your vow. The princess nodded, feeling a strange kinship with the forest now, as though it recognized her as both protector and kin. She sensed the watchful presence of the owl, the stag, and the fox, their eyes glinting from the shadows. They too had known her promise, had felt her sacrifice, and now regarded her with a silent reverence. The keeper stepped back, raising its hands to the sky, and a ripple of light passed through the trees. The stars overhead blazed brighter, filling the canopy with their cold, steady glow, their brilliance reflected in the depths of the midnight forest. The oppressive weight of darkness lifted, and for the first time, the princess felt as though the forest had opened itself to her, allowing her to see not only its shadows, but its hidden beauty. Ancient trees draped in silver moss, flowers that glowed softly like embers, and pools that shimmered with starlight. As the first hint of dawn colored the edge of the sky, the keeper's form began to dissolve, fading back into the shadows. But before it disappeared entirely, it left her with a final message, a whisper that brushed against her ear like the touch of wind. Remember, child, that light and shadow are bound. To forsake one is to abandon both. Let this forest teach you, and may you carry its wisdom within your heart. The princess lowered her head in silent understanding, feeling the ancient truth of the keeper's words settle within her. She was not just a ruler of her kingdom now. She was a guardian of the midnight forest, a protector of the balance that had been neglected for too long. As she turned to leave, the forest seemed to part for her, its darkness no longer threatening but familiar, like an old friend. The owl hooted softly from a nearby branch, and she glanced back to see the faint outline of the stag in the distance, watching her with its steady, ancient gaze. The fox, unseen but felt, trailed behind her in the shadows, offering a final silent tribute to her bravery. When she emerged from the forest, the first rays of dawn touched the kingdom, and the people marveled as the stars still shone faintly overhead, a promise kept alive even as the sun rose. The princess knew in her heart that she was forever bound to both light and shadow, a bridge between her kingdom and the midnight forest. And as the years passed, whenever the stars dimmed or the forest grew restless, she felt a gentle pull, a reminder of her vow. She would return to the midnight forest, honoring her promise to the keeper, a guardian of the balance between worlds, forever tied to the forest's secrets and the light of the stars above. The princess stepped from the depths of the midnight forest, her heart heavy and yet strangely light, as though her spirit had been transformed by the journey. Behind her, the trees whispered a farewell, their branches swaying as if bidding her goodbye. Yet she knew their presence would always linger within her, bound by the vow she had taken. She was no longer only the ruler of her kingdom. She was the keeper of its light and shadow alike. As she crossed the boundary into her lands, the darkness that had once suffocated her people began to lift, like a veil pulled back to reveal the morning's first light. The dawn blossomed in the east, casting a warm glow over the land, and with it, the stars held their place in the sky, a strange yet beautiful sight. For one brief, eternal moment, night and day met, casting a light that was neither sun nor moon, a mingling of both worlds, a balance that restored the kingdom's spirit. Her people gathered at the forest's edge, their faces drawn with days of waiting and worry, but now alight with hope and wonder. They watched her approach, their eyes wide, and some whispered prayers of gratitude, for they had feared she would be lost to the shadows forever. The queen, her mother, stood at the forefront, her regal bearing softened by the relief and joy that lit her face. She stepped forward, her hands reaching out to her daughter, her gaze searching, as if trying to understand the change she sensed in her. "My child," the queen murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. "You have returned to us, yet you seem different. I see the light in your eyes, but also a shadow I do not know." The princess smiled softly, placing her hand over the pendant at her heart, feeling the cool weight of it against her skin, a symbol of her promise. "Mother, I have returned, but a part of me now belongs to the midnight forest. I carry its secrets, its ancient wisdom, and the stars, once hidden, are ours again because of the bond I now hold." A hush fell over the crowd as the princess spoke, her words carrying a weight that seemed to reach each soul gathered before her. She explained how the balance between light and shadow had been broken, how the kingdom's abandonment of the forest had caused the stars to withdraw, veiling themselves in sorrow and silence. And she spoke of her vow, her promise to protect the midnight forest as fiercely as her own people, a pledge to remember both realms. Her people listened, their fear of the forest slowly shifting into a reverent awe, as though they too felt the sacredness of her journey, the importance of the forest's mysteries. Some bowed their heads, and a few wept, overcome by the realization that their beloved stars had not been lost to them, only waiting for their promise to be honored once more. The queen took her daughter's hands, her eyes misted with pride and understanding. You have restored more than the stars, my daughter. You have renewed a bond that was long forgotten. Our kingdom is forever in your debt, for you have brought us peace, not only with the sky, but with the shadows that dwell beneath it. As the sun rose higher, the stars began to fade from the sky, their brightness retreating, but the people knew they were not gone. They had returned to their rightful place, and the princess could feel their presence within her, a quiet, constant light that connected her heart to the midnight forest and to the heavens above. The days that followed were filled with celebration, though they held a solemn note, an understanding that light and shadow were not enemies but kin. The kingdom flourished, and people began to honor the forest at the edge of their land, leaving offerings of flowers, food, and water. Small acts of reverence that acknowledged their connection to the shadows that had once filled them with dread. The princess, now known as the guardian of stars and shadows, became a figure of legend. Children grew up hearing stories of her courage, her journey into the midnight forest, and her pledge to protect the balance between worlds. They spoke of her with awe, and it was said that when the stars shone brightest, it was the princess's spirit reaching out to watch over her people, a bridge of light and shadow, forever woven into the fabric of her land. But the princess herself remained humble, continuing her rule with wisdom gained from her journey. And though her life carried on, she never forgot the keeper's words, the presence of the owl, the fox, and the stag who had guided her, nor the promise that bound her to the forest. And when her life had nearly run its course, when the weight of her years had softened her step and gentled,